Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby, Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024, and Thursday, July 4th, 2024. It has been 48 days since we have started reading, with 148 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 480 pages left to go and are 23.57% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 12 of Wake, the podcast which is heavy on zest, light on finesse, but it's just about as interesting as it gets along the way, all in the name of fulfilling a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I am your host, Toby Malone, joins as ever for a rare evening recording by the man who's always at his best after dark, TJ Young.
I don't know what to make of that, but I'll take it. I'll run with it.
Happy Canada Day, TJ. It was Canada Day, a couple of days ago. I know the Americans have something you do tomorrow, but...
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, I am what I like to call Patriot Light, right? I will do the fireworks. I don't wear flag memorabilia. You'll never catch me in an American flag Speedo. It's just not my vibe.
But you like a barbecue.
I do like a barbecue, and I like a day off. So... and I'm here in Maryland next to the nation's capital as democracy falls apart. Sure, shoot off fireworks.
And the reason we are presenting Wake after dark and on two separate dates today is down to time zones. Our guest this week has hauled herself out of bed at an ungodly hour at the other side of the planet to tackle Finnegans Wake, who not only happens to be a great reader and enthusiast of the arts, who's not only an incredible arts administrator and advocate, who is not only the toughest person I've ever met besides my mother. Not only all of that, she happens to be my one and only sister, Georgia Malone. George, welcome to Wake.
Good morning. How you going?
Very good. I'm very glad that you're here. It's very exciting. Yeah. It's always nice to introduce my favorite people to each other.
I've heard all great things about you, so I'm excited.
Well, that's good. I was going to say all live. No, if they're good, then
no. I only say nice things because we live at other sides of the planet. We only have nice things to say about each other these days. Yeah. Unlike when we were kids. Yeah. And so it's 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Canada. What time is it there in Australia?
It is currently 7 a.m.
Okay, so we have a 12-hour difference, and you've got up.
And it's
in
also
the dark.
really cold. It's all cold. It's midwinter. And I know it's not as cold as Canada, but our houses are not built for this, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm going to be there next week. I'm coming to Australia next week. But I thought that it would be good to get an episode recorded before I came. Why not? Because I don't want to spend my whole holiday just reading Finnegans Wake, just some of it.
Forcing your family members to read along with you.
Of course, absolutely. So when we first started the podcast, you were one of the first people to contact me to ask if you could read a section. So the only question I have for you is, why? Why would you want to do that?
Well, I hadn't heard any of it, so it was all just hypothetical. And
so you hadn't heard it, and now that you've heard it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I have been listening to the podcast, but when it comes to the reading bit, I kind of skip a lot of it. I like the conversation you guys have, but it's like I don't know what's going on. And I just lull into a into a little bit of a meditation stage.
We get a lot of that. That seems to be a fairly universal response.
I think my deep response is, "Oh, Joyce, what a wanker."
That is what everyone has been saying. Like my partner he is a writer. He reads a lot, and every once in a while I just slide him a page, and he's like, "No. Just stop."
Despite all that, he is going to be guesting on an episode in the future. So
he will.
When you first announced the podcast, I was talking to colleagues at work about it, and there's some writers within that, and I was saying about how it's a book that everyone owns but no one reads. And this colleague of mine, Dave, who's like 40, in his early 40s. He's a writer. He's very well read. And he just looked at me and went, "Yep, I own it. Never read it." So
I very much hope Dave is listening. So Dave, we would love to have you on the podcast, or listen along. And I always say, if you've listened to the podcast, then you've read the book.
Yes.
That's fine. But speaking of reading, so you're a great reader now. You sort of grew into a great reader. When we were kids, you weren't much of a reader, and then you sort of grew into reading in your adult life. What kinds of things are you usually fixating on?
I like fiction. I find nonfiction very serious and boring most of the time. I quite like absurdity, and I'm reading a great book at the moment by Steve Toltz, who's a great Australian contemporary author, and it's about the afterlife, and it's just chaos, and it's excellent. There's a lot of sad girl lit going on at the moment, which I'm very bored of.
Right.
The Sally Rooneys and things of the world, and there's a lot of youngest female Australian authors writing in that same kind of mode, and it's just Gen Z complaining about having to live life like normal people, and it's getting very boring.
Well, there's not a lot of sad girl in Finnegans Wake.
At least not that we can decipher.
I mean, maybe, yeah, he's going to point. We're going to get an expert on here one day. He's going to say, "What are you talking about?" The entire 7th chapter. But there is a lot of chaos and there is a lot of absurdity. So hopefully this is up your alley. Do you ever get into any weird stuff? Any stuff that's non-linear or anything that's sort of a little off the wall?
Yeah, love it. There's another great American author, Gary Steingart, who I just love, book Absurdistan, which is excellent. It's usually about Russian Jews in America going back to the motherland and the complete chaos of it all. I really like his work. Just like great writing and great character development. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a period over last year I just stopped reading, so I'm kind of trying to get back into it a lot, and try and find the time.
Yes, time is always the trick. Have you and with this author, time is something you need a lot of. Have you read any of his before? Any of his other ones?
No, I was saying to Mum, I find Joyce is sort of like, it's a young bloke thing. Like young men are like, "I've read Ulysses, I'm so proud." And it's like, okay, mate, calm down. You're so smart. So it's not for necessarily a strong independent women direction of author.
No, although we're about to get into a little bit more of the strong independent women of the book. Anna Livia Pluribel is showing her face here and there as we're going. So it has been a bit blokey up until now, and hearing a lot about HCE and his adventures.
His sexual exploits.
Purported or alleged. And so we're going to get a little bit more of her. So today we're spending a little bit more time. We're finishing the chapter called The Quiz, which is Joyce essentially laying out the history of Ireland, the history of the world, the history of all of these different characters with all of the different questions that you could possibly have. We're finishing off the quiz today. And we talked a little bit about trivia nights in the last episode. What's your stance on useless knowledge? Do you cultivate useless facts to pull out of at a dinner party?
Yes.
Or
absolutely, I'm full of them. Like, my God. So within our families, you talked about Dad being on an autodidact and memory, and you, Toby, have this great amazing memory with Shakespearean, all the things that you wrote your PhD on. I collect useless facts, mostly about some pop culture and films, and we'll know someone's filmography without ever having seen anything of they've done, but know all about them, and a voracious need to knower. Like, I guess it's like, what's that about? And we'll explore and understand, and sound really intelligent sometimes, and have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm good at faking it. So
right, you like to go down the wiki hole.
Yeah. Learn. I like to learn things, know things.
Of course.
Yeah.
What about you, TJ? Do you think that people like that are interesting or insufferable?
I mean, I'm people like that. I mean, you're talking to someone who on Saturday mornings I watch 35 to an hour and a half minute YouTube documentaries about the history of theme park rides. I don't know why, but I'm like, this is this is top tier content in my eyes. And at one point in time, I was listening to a podcast called 20,000 Hertz, which is all just about the sounds of things. And I listened to, I kid you not, 2.5 hours about the evolution of the Microsoft Windows sound. And I was riveted, and they're like, this is why this sound failed. And I was like, this is everything I needed in my life.
Well, you're going to get a lot more of that in this episode of Wake, because we are going to get a lot more of those bitty little facts, some of which you needed in your life and some of which you probably would have been fine without. And so we're looking forward to finishing off this chapter. So we're going to jump into this read. Today, we're reading, as always, from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegans Wake, published in 2000 with a foreword by Seamus Dean. Today, we're reading the second half of chapter 16 from pages 148 to 168 in this edition. And as I said, this is a segment titled The Quiz by the Oxford World's Classic Edition of 2012, which also includes brief summaries of what's happening in each subsection, which we'll address at the end of the reading. As always, George, if you find yourself overwhelmed by the ridiculousness of what we're doing, or you just need to take a break, give us the timeout signal. We will tap you out and we will jump in to save you. So there is no shame in tapping out, but we are not here to make you read if you are not having fun. So that is always on the table.
Using torture device.
Yeah, don't be afraid to use it. I was telling Toby, I woke up at 7 a.m. this morning. I was like, I'm running on 12 hours with like 4 hours of sleep. We'll see. You know, we'll see what happens. My brain might be like, this is it. You've reached your limit.
TJ hasn't tapped yet, and the day's going to come because he's a busy man and lost in his brain. So one day it's going to happen. So it could be today. In which case, I will jump in. I'm always happy to.
And I just want to say, if y'all hear barking, I am in a house with 3 dogs, one of which this is a house they do not belong to, and they are having a very rough time.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's only going to add to the atmosphere.
Yes.
And now, without further ado, Finnegans Wake.
11. If you met on the bench a poor Aeschylus yield of ailing, when the tune of his tremble shook shimmy on shin, while his contrary raged in the weak of his wailing, like a rudulant, pugilant lion o' Lynn, if he maraudered in mistlessness, plaining his plight, or played fox and lice, pricking and dropping hips, teeth, the wringing his handcuffs for peace, the blind blighter, praying dife on dome nostrums foch, Tom thinks to eth, if he wept while he leapt and guffawed, quith a quihemper, made cold blood a blue Monday, and no bones without fletch, taking kiss, cake, or kick with a suck, sigh, or simper, a diffle to larn, and a dibble to lech. If the fain shinner pegged you to shave his immartial, wee skill mustard shoal of this ooh, hoo doo doo, broking wind take that to whiles woe made sin he was partial. We don't think, Jones, we'd care to this evening, would you? Answer, no, blank ye. So you think I am impulsivism. Did they tell you I am one of the 46th? And I suppose you heard I had a wag on my ears, and I suppose they told you too that my role of life is not natural. But before proceeding to conclusivity, confute this begging question. It would be far fitter for you, if you dare, to hesitate to consult with the consequentially attempt at my disposal of the same dime cash problem elsewhere, naturalistically, of course, from the blank point of so emanate a spatialist. From it you will here notice, short upon my for the first remarking you to the sophology of Bichson, while driven as under by the purely dime urge, is not without his cash characteristics, borrowed for this nonsense from the fiery good mother misfortune, who the lost time we had the pleasure we have had our little Ricky brush with what Scott, and, as I further could have told you, as brisk as your DBC behavioralistically palette with a coat of homoid icing, which is in reality only a done by chance ridiculization of the woo and wears hairs theoretics of Weinstein stain. To put it all the more plausibly, the speech form is a mere surrogate, whilst the quality entality I shall explex what you ought to mean by this with its proper when and where and why and how in the subsequent sentence are alternative mentally harrogate and arrogant as the gates may be. Talus is a word often abused by many pasums. I am working out a quantum theory about it, for it is really most tantalizing state of affairs. A pessim may frequent you to say, "Have you been seeing such of Talus and tell us those times?" Optimally meaning, will you put up a hear of Irish? Or a lady eater may perhaps have the casualized as you tiptoed her a la sordine? Or your plates. Is Talus the sword swallower who is on the crati- uh, Craterum, the same Talus von Talus, the Pins Crusher? No, funk you, who runs his duly mile? Of this is perhaps cleaner example. At a recent post-vortex piece infustigation of a determinized case of chronic spinosis, an extension lecturer on the Og who out of matter of form was trying his Caesar's doctor's het Uberleft borrowed the question. Why is which such man's talus qualis, to whom, as a fatter of Mact, Dr. Gwandokji of stout girth, who was wiping his whistle, toastly retorted, "While thou beast one zoom of a whirl, talus and talus originally mean the same thing. Hit its quails."
Professor Lowry Brawler, though I shall promptly prove his whole account of the Shenning Trib is as distinct from the Shalmiser sanitational reforms and of the Mr. Skeels and Dr. Hyde's problem in the same connection differs toto coelho from the fruit of my own investigations, though the reason I went to Jericho must remain, for certain reasons, a political secret, especially as I shall shortly be wanted in Coventry. I congratulate myself for the same and other reasons as being hopelessly vitiated by what I have now resolved to call the dime and cash diamond fallacy. In its talk of confession, which recently met with such leoning uproar in the escape after its confinement, why am I not born like a gentleman, and why am I not now so speakable about my own eatables? Finding Finnegans and Father Budapest 5688 AM wholeheartedly takes his gabber coat and wig, honest, draughty fellow, in his public interest to make us see as how though, as he says, by all's well, the inception of the descent and the ends well of man is temporarily wrapped in obscenity, looking through those accidents with the faroscope of television. This nightlife instrument needs some subtractional betterment in the readjustment of the more refrangible angles to the squeals of his hypothesis on the outer tin sides. I can easily believe heartily in my own spacious immensity as my own house and microbiomost when I have reassured by ratio that a cube of my volumes is to the surfaces of their subjects, the sphericity of these globes. I am pressing for a parliamentary motion this term, which, under my guidance, would establish the deleteriousness of decorousness in the morbidization of the modern mad about woman type, is to the veracity of Fairy Nellie's vacuum. I need not anthropologize for any intentional. I must here correct the school of Neo-Italian or Paleo-Parisian scholar of tinkers and spanglers who say I'm wrong parce out of revolution from romantic I want to be. Downtrodden on my foes. Professor Levi Brullo, FD, of Sex Wyman Italansky finds from experiments made by Hin with Nuremberg eggs in the one hands and watches Kundun upon the oven. Though it is ostensibly a case of Kett's rebellions cooling the Pope's back, because the number of square faiths in weekly circulation will not be appreciably augmented by the Nuthers logging of my copper clods. What the romantic in rags pines after all the tompions, haunting crevices for deadbeat escapement, and what het importunes our meat laid for a Cornish with the mortadella tradition of the poorest common on guardian to waste of time. His ever-present toes are always in retaliation or out for our overpass boots. Hear him speak. Teak, heat, to the loose walla how he boller and bat, tyro or teray. When Moloki won the couple of colds, when we were stripping in number 3, I would take the neat drop that would molt in my mouth, but I failed to see when. I'm purposely refraining from expounding the obvious fallacy as to the specific gravitas of the two delugibits implied, nor the lapses liquae associated with the royal gorge through students of mixed hydrostatics and pneumatic will after some difficulties grapple away with my menions. Media allure, as old Marcellus Caramballas put us, but on Professor Lewis at Brillo's FD, PH Doctor showing, the plead, if he pleads, is all posh and rubbage, and the melodionic scale, since his man's, when no other man's quandra, mine, thank you, while I ought to care for the contrary, and all's that the all is where in love as war, and the plain where me art saw you'd easily rouse from a thunder from a where I cling true tis where true tis there I climb where I innocent looks best pick. There's holy in his eyes.
As my explanations here are probably above your understandings, Lattlebrottons, though as augmentatively uncomparisoned as Cadwan, Cadwallen, and Cadwalliner, I shall revert to a more expletive method which I frequently use when I have to sermo with muddlecrass pupils. Imagine for my purpose that you are a squad of urchins, sniffly-nosed, gosling-necked, clothy-headed, tangled in your lacings, tingled in your pants, etc., etc. And you, Bruno Nolan, take your tongue out of your inkpot. And none of you knows Javanese. I will give you all my easy-free translation of the old fabulous parable. Allaboy, miner, take your head out of your satchel. Audi, Joe Peters. Exordi, facts. The Mooks and the Gripes. Gents and laity-men, full-stoppers and semi-colonials, hybrids and lubbards. Eins with a space and weary-wide space it wast ere it wound a Mookse, The onesomeness wast all to lonely, accented light, broady oval, and a mooks he would a walking go. My hood, cries Antony Romeo. So one grand summer evening, after a great morning and his good supper of gammon and spettish, having flabled his eyes, pilliled his nostrils, vaticinated his ears, and palliumed his throats, he put on his impermeable, seized his impugnable, harped on his crown, and stepped out of his immobile derure albo, so called because it was chuck full of master plasters and had bourgeously let out gardens strewn with cascadas, pentacostas, hawker ducks, and currycombs, and set off from Ludstown a spasso to see how badness was badness in the weirdest of all pencil ways. As he set off with his father's sword, his lancia spisata, he was girded on, and with that between his legs and his tarkeels, our once in only brag spear, he clanked, to my clinking, from vetoes to three-top, every inch of an immortal. He had not walked over a printed pair of parsecs from his asylum, when at the turning of the Shinstone Lantern, near St. Bowery's without his walls, he came, secunding to one on one of his prophecies, amnis limnia permanent, upon the most unconsciously boggy-looking stream he ever locked his eyes with. Out of the collions it took a rise by daubing itself 9 on. It looked little, and it smelt of brown, and it thought in narrows, and it talked in show-shallow. And as it rin, it dribbled like any lovely pearliteasy. My, me and me, little down dream, don't I love thee? And I declare, what was there on the yonder bank of the stream that would be a river, parched on a limb of the olum, bolt downright, but the gripes? And no doubt was he fit to be dried, for why had he not been having the juice of his times? His pips had been neatly all drowned on him. His pulps were charging odours every older minute. He was quickly forgetting the dresses d'exine on the flyleaf of his fronts, and he was quietly forgiving the bailiff's distrain on to the bulk side of his cul de pompe. In all his specious heavings, as he lived by Optimus Maximus, the mooks had never seen his dub-billed brooder on low so nigh to a pickle. Adrian, that was the mooks now's assumptor nome, stuck still fizz-a-fizz to the gripes in an accent of Oricnian. But all mooks must to the mood end such much as all routes, Oysterways or Westerways, in roaming run through room. Hick saw a stone singularly illud, and on hock stone Seta hat's hook sate, which it filled quite preposterously, and by acclimatation to its fullest justiciorium, and whereupon, with his unfallible uncycling upon his alloyable diopterarch of the woust, and the amethyst-sprinkled pederect he always worked with, deuce dead it. Cheek by jowl with his fisherman's blague, bellua triumphans, his every way added to Wallet's collection, for yea longer he laved, yea broader he betaught of it, the fetter, the sum, and the haul it cost. He looked straight the first and the last mica-like laciness of Quartus the fifth, and Quintus the sixth, and Sixtus the seventh, giving all-night sitting to Lio the faulty findeth. Good appetite us, Sir Mooks. How do you do it? Cheeped the gripes, in a wery, wiggy, Magdalenian voice, and the jackasses all within ball laughed and brayed for his intentions, for they knew their sly toad lowery now. I am ramromrium blessed to see you, my dear mouster. Will not perhaps tell me everything, if you are pleased, Sanity? All about Orn and Lithiel, and all in all, and all about Orn and Lysias? Eh? Think of it! Oh, miserdizimus retemptor, gripes. Rats, bellowed the mooks most telephoriously, the consoniator, and the cinemusses and the zosimusses in their Robenhouses quailed to hear his tardy noise at all, for you cannot wake a silken nouse out of a horse oar. Blast yourself and anthemy inferi ori bois. No, hang you for an animal rural. I am superbly in my supremus poncif. Abase you, baldy queens. Gather behind me, satraps, rots. I am till infinity obliged with you, bowed the gripes, his wine having gone to his paltry head. I am still always having a wish on all my extremities. By the wash, what is the time? Pass. Figure it, the pining peaver, to a mooks! Ask my index, mund my Achilles, swell my obulum, wash up my nase serene, asked the mooks, rapidly by turning Clement, Urban, Eugenius, and Celestian in the foremost of good gogroggery humours. Quota whore, that is quite about what I came on my missions, with my intentions, lauvid libera, to settle with you, Barbaroos. Let Thor be Orlog. Let Pauline be Irene. Let you be Beaton. Let me be Los Angeles. Now measure your length. Now estimate my capacity. Well, Sour, is this a space of a couple of hours two-dimensional for you, Temporizer? Will you give you up? Como, fuert it. Sancta Potentia, you should have heard the voice that answered him, Culla Vosselina. I was just thinking upon that, Swiss Mooksy, but for all the rhyme on my raisins, if I cannot make my submission, I cannot give you up, the Gripes whimpered from nethermost of his one hope. I shall as so be bound as will do so you says it. My tumble, loudy bullocker, is my own. My felicity is to fit in one stock end, and my special in excelsis the bellowing things ab of. But I will never be able to tell your honoriousness, here he near lost his limb, though my corked father was but a pseudo-waiter, whose cloak you wear. Incredible. Well, hear the inevitable.
Your temple, sussing crimbo, semper excommunicating amicably summers, Turgras and New Robe, or Turgras and Ashes. Novarome, my creature, bleed believers, my building space in Leonine City is always to let the Leon-like men, the Mookse, in a most constrainous allocution pontifically with immediate jurisdiction consistently conclude with a clamor of his shape-rucked gripes, and I regret to proclaim that it is out of my temporal to help you from being killed by inches. With a thrust, as we first met each other, knew where so airily. Poor little so was vised, sub-squished gripes. I begin to feel con- contemption for him. My side, thank Decretals, is as safe as Mother Or's houses, he continued, and I can see from the holy dome what it is to be wholly sane. Union jock, and to be joined to yoke. Parasis to Salis. Cruxy Crooks belongs to him who perishes himself. And there I must leave you subject for the pressing. I can prove that against you. Wait a common momentum, mine gut enemy, or Cospoles, not our star. I bet you this dozen odd, this Folomanius dozen odd, quas primus, but 'tis bitter to compote my knowledge fructose of tomes, elevating, to give paint to this blick, his jeweled predirect to the all mystery Silong he lucky struck bluid out of the few should be scintillantes, a cloister of starabouts over maples, a Lucilois and Tresses Street, and the stop sign before Sophie's Barrett's. He guarded to Goddard the odds dociner of his vellums, Gresque, Letten, and Russian crusangs, onto the laps of his prolegs, into Umfoleth one scruppered, and sat about his wider proof. He proved it well who on earth dry sick times, the verimentant to cessus, to the extinction of Nicholas altogether. Nicholas Alpius Al Alopesis, having been the one gripes pop-willed nimbum by Nucadulus and Exagras and Mumpson and Thumpsim by Ormus, and by Amminus, by Anacletus the Jew, and by Malachi the augurer, and by the Capon's collection, and after that the cheek keys, galantine, and all-day brandies for Malone. He reproved it earl together, when not in the order, sundering in some different order, alter 330 and 100 times by the binomilla Bonamila diorama, and the panic walls in the end, the inked spill, legends, and the ruer, the rule of the hoop, and the blessings of expedience and the just, the juggescence of Pontius Pilate, and all the mummy scripts of sick books, junk room, and the chapters of the cunning, of the chapters of the conning fox by tail. While the Mookses were pre-procession with the pro-procession, duplicity and diplucidity was was promulgating ipos and sad contras, and this rascally Gripos had all bust succeeded, and monophysicking his ill so borderance. But all his falls had caught his base Semion's Saranatrix to combricate upon the syllaphus of his Aspilaouts, and the octoporalzers of his haggy own Funamux to Syntheris with a bread chest viciousness of his sweet ovalar, docious so far fully the logger thuds of his sacularies were found at variance with his cytodals of his sompolium, and his babs kissed nepo greasy most got the hoof from his filioquas. After 1,000 yawns, O gripes, con my sheepskins, Yao will be belied to the world, escade mooks the pewis. After 1,000 years, amused gripes the Gregory, be the goat of Mechamads, yours may be still, O mooks more betrothed. Us shall be chosen as the first of the last by the electress of Valhallo, absolved of Mookses nobly, for par the unicrum of Elijax, us am and our stabulary, and that is what Ruby and Robbie fall for. Blissum, the pills, the nasal wash, Yardleys, the army man cut, as British, as bond strict, and as straight cut as when the broken arch traveller from Nuzzleland. We, confuse the gripes limply, shall not even be the last of the first, we hope, when outs are visited by the veiled horror. And, he added, me are relying entirely. See the fortitude of Elisabeth, of the weightiness of Mare's breath. Pufut! Unsighted baird, embarrasher, relentless foe of social and business success. Horahalion. It might have been a happy evening, but, and they vertebrated each other, const it cobbler, with the wildest ever wielders since Taratesius' last Pissophilium. Unachorn, Uglant, Uvaloid, Uskybeak, and Bullfoley answered volleyball.
Nuvoletta, in her light dress spun of Sistine shimmers, was looking down on them, leaning on the banisters, listening as she childishly could. How she was brightened when Shooter-ups and in his globbering Hoskid and Wellenstuck, and how she was closed when knees knobs on his swivel and was making such pulsing of himself. She was alone. All her Nubian companions were asleep with squirrels. Their Mivia, Mrs. Moonen, was off in the furthest quarter, scrubbing the back steps of number 28. Fruva the Scand, he was up in the Norwood's Scoa parlour, eating oceans of Voking's blemish. Nuvoletta listened as she reflected herself, though the heavenly one with his constatria and his emanations stood between, and she tried all she tried to make the Mookse look up at her, but he was for to adeptuously far-seeing, and to make the gripes hear how coy she could be, though he was much too systematically Aurelia about his aims to heed her. But it was all mild vapour moist. Not even her faint reflection, Nuvolutia, could they toke their noses off for their minds in their intrepified fate and bungless curiosity, were conclaved with Heliogobulus and Commodius and Enobarbarus and whatever the cordial Dickens they did, as their damp proach of papyrus and book stubs said. As if that was their spiration, as if theirs could duperate her queendom, as if she would be a third party to search proceedings. She tried tried all the winsome, wansome ways her four winds had taught her. She tossed her some tailless hair like a princess de la petite Bretagne, and she rounded her minion's arms like Mrs. Cornwallis West, and she smiled over herself like the beauty of the image of the pose of the daughter of the Queen of the Emperor of Ireland, and she sighed after herself as if she were she born to bride the Tristus Tristior Tristimus, but sweet Mandolin, she might fair as well carried her daisy's worth to Florida. For the Mookse, dog-mad asinite, were not amused, and the Gripes, Dorbilbaust, Catholic, was painfully oblivious. I see, she sighed. There are mena. The sis of the wisp of the sigh of the softening of the stir of the bergros, a rundo of a long one in the mightiest reeds, and shades began to glitter along the banks, grapesping, dusk unto dusk, and it was glooming as gloaming could be in the waste of all peaceable words. Metamincia was all Sunome, colourform brune, Sither, Spain, and Elialand, enormous and unnumerous. The Mookse had sound eyes right, but he could not all hear. The Gripes had light ears left, but could not all see. He ceased, and tongue and trit, and it was never so dusk of both of them. But still Moo thought of the deeps and the unts, and he would profundeth come with a morose and still grey field of the Scripes he would escape by Grice if he had luck in ropes. Oh, how it is dusk! From the Valley Maria to grassy Polania, dormant echo. Adieu, adieu. It was so dusk that the tears of night began to fall, first by ones and twos, then by threes and fours, at last by fives and sixes, of sevens, of the tiered ones were waking, as we weep now with them. Oh, 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 parla pluie. Then there came down to the thither bank a woman of no appearance. I believe she was a black with chills at her feet. And she gathered up the hoarseness, the motorfully where he was spread and carried him away to her invisible dwelling. That's heights Aquila repax, for he was the holy sacred solemn, and a pot-up spit of her bottom's apron. So you see the Mookse, he had a reason, as I know, and you knew that he knew all along. And there came down to the hither bank a woman too all important, though they say that she was comely, spite the cold in her heed. And for he was as like it that blows to the hawker's hank, she plucked down the gripes, torn pickney auto-tune in a anger from his limb, and carried away the beotitubes with her to her unseen shailing. It is de rohr coeli. And so poor Gripes got wrong, for there was always that is always how a Gripes is, always was and always will be. And it was never thought of either of them. And there was left now only elm tree but a stone, poled with pieterus seer but soul. Oh, yes, and Nuvoletta, alas. Then Nuvoletta reflected from the last time in her long life, and she made up all her myriads of drifting minds in one. She cancelled her engorgements. She climbed over the banisters. She gave a childly cry, "Nue, nue!" A light dress fluttered. She was gone, and into the river that had been a stream, for 1,000 of tears had gone on her and come on her, and she was missed out and struck on dancing, and muddied name was Mississippi. There fell a tear, a singulate tear, the loveliest of all tears. I mean, for those Cry Love Fable fans who are keen on the pretty, pretty common face sort of thing, you mean you meet by Hope Harrods. For it was a late tear, but the river tripped on her by and by, lapping as though her heart was brook. Why? Way, oh way. I'm so silly to be flowing, and I cannot stay. No applause, please, bast. The Romscott Nattle Shaker will go round your circulation in Dios duras. Just, a la boy, Major. I'll take your reactions another place after themes. Nolan Brown, you may now leave the classroom. Joe Peters, Fox.
As I have now successfully explained to you, my own natural-born rations, which are even in excise of my vaulty brain, ensure me that I am a mouth's more deserving case by genius. I feel in sympathis for my ever-devoted friend and half-our loaf-on-washed Nakas Nokovich. Darling Jem, darling Small Fox, Horace Shoe. I could love that man like my own Ambo for being so Bailey Claver, though he's a Norfolk curless, and I must slave to methodiousness. I wanted to go and live like a Tybalt in charge of the Light Night Brigade on Tristan de Cunha, Isle of Man Overboard, where he'll make number 106 and be near inaccessible. The meeting of mahoganies be the waves remetious at me, that this exposed sight, though it pines for an umbrella of its own and needs a shelter belt of the true service sort to keep its whole bowls clean, the weeping beaches, Picea and Tilia, are in a wild state about it, or to be classified as cricket butt William and his own 2 nurserymen advisers suggested, under genus exhaustible, when we refloat upon all the butternut, sweet gum and manna ash, etc., which is so purulent there, as if there were a hawthorns in Curragh-Chasa, which ought to look as plain as a lodgepole to anybody until we are introduced to that pine terracotta of Verni Rubius, where that Diodati is pictured for us in the pure stand. which we do not doubt has a habitat for doing, but without those self-owned seedlings, which are a species of proof that the largest individual can occur at or in an ovulation such as East Connor Hillock, where it mixes with full Acacians and common sallies and is tender. Vox populus, as we say in Hickory Hockory, and I wish we had some more glasses of arbor vitae. Why rote the road by the roadside or orn over alum pot? Alderman White Beaver is Dacko. He ought to go away for a change of ideas, and he'd have a world of things to look back on. Do, sweet Daniel. If I weren't a Jones in myself, I'd elect myself to be his dolphin in the wilds below because he was such a barefooted rubber with my super socks pulled over his face, while I publicked in my best back garden for the laetification of siderodomites and to the irony of the stars. You will say it is most un-English, and I shall hope to hear that you will not be wrong about it, but I further feeling a bit husky in my truths. Will you please come over and let us more mergiously to each other's own down below our vices? I am underheard by old Bill Faust. Wilsh is full of kirks. The Cool's Kittle is Philip Dillabnite. Mr. Whist is there over beyond the want not. Wilsh and Whist are as thick as thins udder as Faust on the Debble night. Shagun shuto estas preta de tapizo malgranda. Ligalas al ciencia chambro. Kelkefior functas, kelkefior shrumptas, shrulzroj. Hudan kiel vi fartas, mia nigra sinjoro? And from the point of fun where I am crying to arrive you at, they are on all four as foible-minded as you can feel they are fable-bodied. My heeders will recoil with a great leisure how at the outbreak before trespassing on the space question, where even Michelangelines have fooled to tread, I prove to myself as to your soistification how is abject all through the quick quid of Professor Keondalone's too frequently hypothecated Betlemensch is nothing so much more than a mere cash dime, however genteel he may want ours, if we please. I'm speaking to us in the second person. For to this graded intellectual's dime is cash, and the cash system, you must not be allowed to forget that this is all contained, the system in the dog marks of origin on Spurios, means that I cannot now have or not have a piece of cheaps in your pocket at the same time and with the same manners as you can now not half or have half the cheeker piece I've in mind unless Burrus and Cassius have not or not have simultaneously disentangled themselves, sell dear to sold there, once in the dairy days of by and by.
Spurius, let us like to imagine, is a genuine prime, the real choice, full of natural grace, the mildest of milk stoffs, yet unbeaten as a reside, and, of course, absolutely unadulterous, whereat Cassius is obviously the revise of him, and in fact not an ideal choice by any meals, though the better man of the two is meltingly addicted to the more casual side of the Erevasio case, and let me say it at once, as zealous over him as is passably he. The same home, and his triseeks, the hipendents which we used to be reading for our pre-purgatory, hot, short, his duddy shut the shopper up, and Moody, poor Moody, brought us our poor suppy, who, how, and Octus, and Oleus, and Celius, Volatius, and Petrius Papricus. Our old party quite ununited round the salt bowl at Commons. Prefarer Salamos himself, and that sprog of a petal still in his sprig of time, and a dozen of the Murphy buds, and the score and more of the hot young capels, and the Lettucea and her green sleeves, and you two and me three, twinsome bibs, but handsome eights, like Shakespeare and eggs. But there's many a split pretext, bowl and jowl, and snob screwed the court. Shoot! To understand this uh, as well as you can, feeling how backward you are in your down to the ground benches. I have completed the following arrangement for the course use of stools and if I don't make away with you, I'm beyond Caesar outnulsted. The older Caesars, tyrants, regicide is too good for you, become unbearable from age. The compositor of the farce of destiny, however, makes the thumple drum mistake of letting off this pianoforte effect as his first act, as that is where the juke comes in. Having been sort of nine-knived and truly removed, this soldier, author, Batman for all his common common storycism, is just another of those soft-seized bubbles who never quite got the Sandhurst out of his eyes, so that the champagne he draws for his is a flop as a plank krieg. The twin Freer types are billed to make their re-up appearances as they new neck and knife knick-knocks on the deserted Champ de Boteles. A most cursory reading into the Presic Uraline's hostelry shows us how Phonomag Ula picked up the proper Newman out of a collusion of prefixes, though to be permentiating Canosaur, the Caucasian offsprung sprung of the son of a cook, is as satin as there's a tub of Tobolsks, Osek Dula Vogel Marina. But I am but that I deny the fact of Wanton to West Point, I could paint you to the butter. Cheese it, if you have some wash. Mortalive. Oh me non on onsens. Why the case is the incessive and impulsive as Kizum hands. Their interlocutive is comprovocatives, just as every hazy hates to having a has-been in her nose. Cassius may bethink himself as though a cavalier, but Burrus has the richly rounded head that goes best with th- the of-thinking defensive fideism. He has the lack of wisdom under every dent in his lofter, while the others follows Ani, Vessi, Milky, and Deed my, laughing over the lentus and weeping off the Unan. He he hissed the hay og, he list the lug, pooh hoo, and each night Sim Mrs. Maid, he winks he had the sim again. It was aptly and cordially stated, and it is royally needless for one ex Ugan Leonum to say by whom, that his seeing's craft was the clarity as were the whole borough of Port Borg to be avalanchhed over him pinchbatch, he could still make out with the augustric the green mote of Ireland's eye. Let me sell you the full trough of Burrus when he wore a yonker. Here it is, the chorning two and 6x7s, a cleanly line, by the gods, a king off duty and a jaw forever. And what a cheery, ripe outlook. Good help me, Deus Videus, if I were to speak to my whole mouthful and to Aranam about it, you should call me the Ormond's alignment in your midst of fame. Eat ye up, heat ye up, sings the Psalmon and the Psalm. Buterem et mel commodet et ut scut reprobar malum et elegir bonum. This, of course, also explains why we were taught to play in the childhood. Der, der Hansel ist ein Butterbrot, mein Butterbrot. Und Kobia ist dein Schittenkot. Ja, ja, ja. This is, in fact, just to show you, is Cassius, the bruther Scrooge, or pure Tyron, a hole or two, the high stinks aforfelt and anigo prig worms. Chesug, you complain, and high must say you are not wholly in the wrong. Thus, we cannot escape our likes and mislikes, exiles and or ambushers, beggar and neighbor, and this is where the dime show advertisers advance the temporal relief plea. Let us be tolerant to antipathies. Next quaes burrow num fit maricas. I am not hereby giving my final endorsement to the learned ignorance of the Cosinus philophism, in which old Nicholas pegs it down that the smarter the spin of the top, the sounder the span of the bottom. What that worthy old Aubergeisty ought to have meant was, the more sturdily immobile in space appears to me the bottom which is presented to use in time by the top primo mobilisks and etc. And I shall be misunderstood if understood to give an unconditional sinquem to the hero Isid furabouts of the no lands theory, or at any rate of that substrate of apart from his hearing, wherein the Theophil swores that the principle he was the pointing start of his Odois by comparison, and that the wild's eggs will fall cheapened all over the walled, and burr will be dear on the brie. Now, while I am not out now to be taken up as unintentionally recommending the Zuckerstrog tridynamo machine for the more economical helix troilus of these ambopates until I can find space to look into it myself a little more closely first. I shall go on with my decisions after having shown to you in good time how both products of our social stomach, the excellent Dr. Burrowman, I noticed by the way from his uh, amended food theory, has been carefully digesting the very wholesome criticism I help him to in my precepts edition, which is all so much to the cud, are mutually polarized the incapability of any delusional acting as ambivalent to the fixation of the privatism. Positioning as above, two males poles, and the pictor of the other, and the amber the scotia of the one, the looking wantingly around our undistributed middle between males. We feel we must wastefully want a female to focus, and on this stage there pleasantly appears the cowrie maid, M, who we shall often meet below, who introduces herself upon us at such precious hour, which we shall again agree to call absolute zero, or the babbling pump of plantism. And so, like the former son of a Kish who went up and out to found his farmer's ashes, we come down home gently on our own turn, turned about asses to meet margarine.
We now romp through a period of pure lyricism of shame-bred music. Technologically, let me say, the appetizing entry of this subject on a full chest of violds is plumply putting the cart before the d'oeuvres. Evidence by such words is in distress as, "I cream for thee, sweet margarine," and the more hopeful, "Oh, Margarina, still in a bowl full of left a lump of gold." Correspondents, by the way, will keep on asking me what is the correct garnish to serve with the dishrines with. Tansy sauce. Enough. The pawn-breaking pathos of the first of these shoddy pieces reveals the Cassius effort. Burius's bit is often used for a toast. Criniculture can tell you us very precisely indeed how and why this particular streak of yellow silver first appeared on, not in, the bowl, that is to see the human head, bald, black, bronze, brown, brindled, betrayed, or blanche-manged, where it might be used fully compared with an earwig on a full bottom. I'm offering this to Signorita Katikura as I intend to take it up and bring it under the notions of her Harlene by the way of diverting his attentions. Of course, the unskilled singer continues to pervert our wiser ears by subordinating the subspace element, that is to sing the aria, to the time factor which ought to be killed il tempore. I shall advise any unborn singer who may still be among the heaters to forget the temporal diaphragm at home. The best thing could happen to it, and attack the roulade with a swift colpo di glottide to the lug, though Mace will insist it was reclined from overdoing this, his recovery being slow. And then, on the third dead beat, to close her eyes and open her oath with, and see what spice I might send her. How? Cease thee, cantatrice. I fain would be solo. Arouse thee, my valour, and save for her my troubadour. I shall have a word to say in a few yards about the acoustic and orchidentral management of the tone hall, but as ours is a vivarious, where one plant's brief is a longer planner's bicent, and you may not care for argon, it would be convenient for me to emolument to pursue Burrus and Cassius for a rung or two up the isolating biangle. Every admirer has seen my goulash of a Marge. She is so like the sister, so you don't know, and they both dress alike, which I titled The Very Picture of Needless Woman, which in the present ornates our national crucistand. This genre of portraiture of changes of mind in order to be truly torse should evoke the bush soul of females, so I am leaving it to an experienced victim to complete the general suggestion by the mental addition of wallopy bound, or, should the zoological zealot prefer it, the conogral teal. The hat boxes which compose Romba Lady Trabizond, Marge in her Excelsius, also comprise the climactogram up which B and C may fondly be imagined, ascending and are suggestive of gentlemen's spring modes. These modes carrying us back to the superimposed clay layers of Eocene and Pleistocene formation and the gradual morphological changes in our body politic, which Professor Edibi Aruri of Philanponosis, whose blutterbust I have just given his coup de grace to, neatly names surprises. The boxes, if I may break the subject gently, are worth about fourpence power box, and I am inventing more patent process, foolproof, and pie perfect. I should like to ask that Sherlock Holmes person who is out for removing the roofs of our criminals' classics by what deductio ad dominium he hopes to de tacto to detect anything unless he happens of himself, movable tecto, to have slayed off. after which they can be reduced to a fragment of their true crust, even by the youngest of Margies, if she was to take please to be seated and smile if I please. Now there can be no question about it either, and having done as much, have quite got the size of that demilitary young female, we will continue to call her Marge, whose types may be met with in any public garden, wearing the very dressy affair known as Ethel of instep length, with the real fur reduced to 3/9, the muffin cap to tone. They are angel skin this fall, ostentatiously hemming apologetically over the shirt of some sweet garment when she is not sitting on all free benches, avidly reading about it, but evidently on the look out for him, also thrilled about the best dressed dolly pram and the beautiful elbow competition, or at the movies swallowing sobs and blowing mixed cuts over Child and Chaplin's latest, or by the verge of the gutter with some bobbed hair, brief-rocked baby Mars toddler. The Smythes now keep 2 domestics, and they aspire to 3 male ones: a shower, a butler, and a secretary, held hostage at arm's length, teaching his infant majesty how to make mortars worse. I'm closely watching Master Pools, and I have reasons to suspect from my post that her little man is a secondary school teacher under the boards of education and voted disciple of Infotellus, who is being utilised thus publicly by the Centura Infanta to conceal her own more masculine personality by flaunting frivolous finery over men's inside clothes, for the femininity that the tota mulia will always lack the musculink and vivarium. My solutions for the proper parturience of the matters and the education of micturious mites must stand over for a moment till I tackle a tickler hussy for occupying my intentions. Margarina, she is fond of Burrus, but alack, she is very fond of Chi. The important influence exercised on everything by this enthusiasm, import has not been till now fully flavoured, though we comfortably tasted in this case. I shall come back for a little more, say farther on. The Cleopatrician, in her own right, as she at once complicates the position, while Burrus and Cassius are contending for her misery and implicating herself with elusive Antonius, a wop who would appear to hug a personal interest in refined cheese of all shades in the same time as he wags an automine art of being rude like a boor. This Antonius Burrus Cassius group triad might be said to equate the qualis equivalent with the older so-called Talus and Talus on Talus. One just might quantly as the hyperchemical economically at the Turium ergons irremuniate the quantum urge, so that the eggs is to weigh as way is to Zed, like golf child's Abe boob caddy. As this is why any simple philotovius of a fool you like to dress, and at himmost died low townian, ex-legged fatirist right, may awfully green to one side of him, and fruitfully blue on the other, which will not screen him, however, from appealing to my gropey searching eyes, though the strongholds of my acropole is boosted, blasted, bleating, blatant, bloated, blasphemous idiot who cannot tail a bomb from a pineapple when he steals one and wanted pissing his Solomon with a conig in our gregtational pom-poms with the canting crew. No, topsman to your tapia. This thing, Mr. Abbey, is an infrant. And taking off salt stuffs and alike matters. I hope we can kill time to reach salt because there's some force glass neurotic assets bittering in soul pewter for you to plump on your pottage in. The thundering legion has stormed a limp that it end. 12 tabular times till now I have indicted it. Virus genius to Cassius. Moitura et salutat. My famous race is run. So let democracy take the highmost. Abraham Trippier, these old delicacies are quite out of date. Read next answer. I'll beat you so long, big-tempered. Why not take direct action? See previous reply. My unchanging word is sacred. The word is my wife. To expose and expound, to vend to the vulnerate, and may the curlews crown our own nuptious, till breath us depart. Wayman, beware would you change with my years. Be as young as your grandmother. The ring man, the wrong shop, but the right words by the rote order. Ubi lingera nucupescit ibi fas, aversus hostia semper sat. She that will not feel my full moon, let her peal to thee as the hoyden and the impudent. That mon that hath no Moses his stole, nor is awed by conquests of words law, who never with himself was fed, and leaves his soil to lave his head, when his hopes in his high lows from whisking his woe, if he ever came to my preach, a proud purse-broken ranger, when the havens were welling and the spite of the spout, to beg for his bite and bark, noise danger. Would meself and Mac Jeffert, four in hand, foot him out? Aye, were he my own breast brother, my doubled with love and the single biased hate, were we bred from the same fire, signed with the same salt, had we tapped from the same master and robbed the same till, were we tucked in one bed and bit by the one flea, homeo gallant, hemi capnoise, bum and dingo, jack and bichole, though it broke my heart to pray it, still I fear, I'd hate to say it.
12. Caesar esto? Answer. Seamus sumus.
This is the maddest I've been.
Why are you mad?
Every time I would think that we're about 25% of the way through the book, and I would think
officially more than a quarter of the way through now. Yeah.
That my brain at this point would say, there are real words amongst these fake words. You know these real words. And my brain is still like, no, you don't.
No.
You don't.
Playing tricks on you.
How was it for you, Geordie?
Yeah, no, it was. I felt like I understood it more while reading it. Probably because I could see the parentheses, like and you kind of see the flow. Because if I'm just listening, I just drift away.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I like that the poetry and some of the alliteration and stuff, and some of the descriptions, and it was good.
It gets fun after a while when you sort of start to sort of work your way through the tongue twisters and navigate things, and you think, "Oh, here's a word I'll never get," and then you get it. And I thought, I think it's a really interesting thing. You've confirmed my suspicion that the Australian accent really does lend itself to Joyce.
I've been trying to tell you, like, you reading it, I'm like, give it to me all day. Pour it in my ears. Let it flood my frontal cortex. The second it comes out of this Southern man's mouth,
no.
I'm like,
That's not my point. My point is more that it was one thing because I was like, okay, I'm used to reading it and I'm reading, I'm a trained actor and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, yeah, that's one thing. But then hearing Georgia read it and going, yeah, no, the Australian accent is so much closer to the Irish accent. And so a lot of the phrasing really does work quite seamlessly with an Australian accent.
Though I did think that, like, you can tell that I've never learned any Latin.
I'm right there with you.
No, absolutely no other languages. So, yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, I think if you knew every language and you tried to come at this, you would still be humbled. I think the idea is that it's supposed to humble us. It's supposed to resist easy analysis.
My German teacher is upset right now. She is. I'm sorry, Frau Daly. I let you down.
But the problem is it comes out of nowhere. And suddenly you'll be upon a word and you go, whoa, this is Italian right now. And I didn't see it coming. It's not italicized. It's not set aside. It's not in larger font or something. And with this, the thing I love about this edition, and I think this is the true with most editions, is it's not annotated. So there's no guide to help you along the way. You can't look to the bottom and see the footnotes like you can in most Shakespeare plays. Generally, there's a gloss at the bottom that will help you out. But
I find annotation just distracts from the kind of like flow of the narrative anyway. So you just spend your whole time, am I supposed to read them as we go? Or like, you kind of get a bit like, am I doing this right? When it's like that.
I mean, when it comes to Joyce, the answer is generally yes and no. I don't think there's any way of doing it wrong. And once we get into the next section, the next book, we have annotations throughout Joyce. I'm just holding this up to the screen here, and that he's going to test our patience for how we're going to read something with annotations on the side.
So he's writing this for 16 years. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Was he okay?
No. The answer is no.
His mental health. I worry about his mental health. Like, is it renowned that he was actually quite mentally unwell? Because that just would have been all-consuming.
Yes, and it literally killed him.
Yeah.
He didn't last much longer beyond this. I think he got it all out, and then there was nothing else for him. But then again, like we keep saying, there are moments of genuine humor, turns of phrase that are delightful. And before the Mooks and the Gripes, telling everyone to sit down, the students in the classroom, sit down and take your tongue out of the ink pot. And it's delightful. Yeah, it really makes it all worth it. But then there's other things that are a lot more challenging.
Yeah, like we talked about last week with Eiley, if the edition had been broken up differently, so we can see line breaks in different places and stuff like that, right? Just to help delineate some of these shifts in narrative and when's dialogue and when's not. It would definitely aid in the reading of it, but I'm still constantly confounded by the way that he ignores all those rules that we're taught. And it's just like, and go. Like it, it's funny because I was an English lit major in undergrad, and they talk about stream of consciousness writing, and I always felt like I was like, this isn't really stream of you know what I mean? It's like it never really felt as stream of consciousness as they were proclaiming. I was like, this is stream of consciousness,
right? Because a lot of that fake stream of consciousness, you can feel like you can see the connections, and you can see. So a stream of consciousness would be like, I wrote a lot of words all in a row, and I didn't use punctuation, and the story went all over the place. And you can see where the author got the idea for the next segment, and then sort of shifted over into that. Whereas this. There's no seams.
It just hits you, and you're like, "Oh, we're here now."
Yeah. How did so both of you got longer sections to read? How did it feel reading those big, longer sections where you had 4 or 5 pages at a time? Were they daunting when you saw them coming? When you're right in the middle?
Yeah, I think looking at when I kind of pre-looked at them and when like, oh god. Anyway, here we go. But I think reading it felt. It had, because it had a bit more of a poetic flow or just a rhythm to it. It kind of felt better to read it out loud, and I understand why you're doing this, Toby. Yeah, and some of the language and the references, and the woman in the balcony, and leaping off the balcony into the river. So, yeah, no, it was interesting. And also, one of the first parts I think was practiced, I said before with my husband, I'm just sort of come across the word television, and I'm like, television wasn't invented then. So we had to look it up and find out what television meant. And it was invented in the 20s.
Just not quite how we picture it, but yeah,
no.
It's on the way.
And as he says, it's not quite right yet. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, you think you're slick by assigning me larger sections episode by episode. I'm on to you. No, but it's the same thing every time. When you get in the flow, you're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. My brain is doing the thing," and you hit that, and then you hit a speed bump, and I'm like, "Oh,
yeah."
Which, and then you're like, "Okay, here's my flow again. Here's my flow again. Oh, here's a speed bump." There's always a moment. I'm not gonna lie. There's a moment in the middle of a longer section where the best way I can describe it is like, I've jumped off the diving board. I'm having fun. I hit the water, and then I realize I have to swim to the edge. Which is a little thrilling. It's it's the academic equivalent of a roller coaster ride.
And no one wants to bail out, which I'm very impressed by. No one wanting to tap out. I'm dedicated to never tapping out because this is my dumb idea. But I'm expecting that there'll be some. But yeah, I appreciate that everyone's slogging the way through, because the story that we were telling today was kind of all over the place. I mean, I think there's an interesting, so from the Oxford World Classic summary with page and line numbering conventions here, I'll just go through what happened in section 1.6, the quiz. This is 148 to 168. I don't know if much of this comes through, bits and pieces, but from 148.33 to 168, we have question 11 in the quiz. Sean answering himself with a long lecture obsessed by binaries and conflicts, and which, between 149.34 and 152.3, parodies Wyndham Lewis's Time and Western Man. That old page turn.
Of course.
That thing I know so well.
Obviously. 152.4 to 159.23. In illustration of the twins' verbal dueling, the Mookse and the Gripes, oblivious to their sister Izzy or Nuvoletta, who shows up on 157. Then 159 to 24 to 161.14, Shem should clear off. 161.15 to 168.12, yet more illustration through the allegory of Burrus and Cassius. And then 168.13 to 14, question 12, Shem. And we're going to meet Shem in the next chapter, or at least Shem the penman is going to be the focus there. But yeah, a lot of stuff in there, really difficult illusions. And the one tiny little bit of research that I did, I don't do very much, but I had a little look to see, just trying to figure out what the Mookse and the Gripes is. What is that? Like, what's the reference it's making? And it's so interesting that Joyce is using the story of the 12th century Pope, the Irish Pope, who supported the English king's invasion of Ireland. And so the Gripes represents the Irish people. But it's also not only that, it's also the Mookse and the Gripes is also the Aesop fable of the fox and the grapes. And so it's combining both of those things together to illustrate this relationship between Sean and Shem. But he does it in the most difficult, obtuse way, not just sort of saying, look, I'm going to tell this allegory of the Irish Pope, but he shrouds it in these characters and then uses Aesop but never mentions Aesop. He digs us down way deep, and then you get to the bottom of the hole and he says, look around, what do you think of the bottom of the hole? And you say, I can't see anything down here, it's too dark. So it's a payoff that doesn't pay very much.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of Aesop's fables, like a huge fan of them. I mean, I name my home PC is called Chanticleer. Like, I love Aesop's fables. And when you said Fox and the Grape, I'm like, I'm mad because I know that, and I just over my head, where is it? You know?
I mean, obviously, Georgia, you're very familiar with Wyndham Lewis's Time and Western Man, so obviously that was a reference that was absolutely, yeah. That's on everyone's bedside table. It's one of those. It's just, well, that's one of the sad girls.
Pre-1920, so
lots of ways to remind us that we're not as smart as we think we are as we read through Joyce.
Yeah,
I call this my weekly humbling at this point.
It kind of comes in conflict with the need to always win as well and actually be the best. So It's kind of like you talk about tapping out, Toby. It's like people won't tap out because they've got to win, right? You've got to be,
yes. Well, particularly as we go on, and there's been very few taps. I think we had one tap when a reader got lost on the page, not because they were quitting, but because they just got lost. It's been an interesting process. I mean, and I'm glad that you joined us to get into this. I don't know if there was anything in particular, anything else that anyone noticed as we're going through. I liked on page 151, Professor Llewellyn ap Breel as referred to the PH doctor. I'm going to use that from now on. Not just refer.
You are the PH doctor.
There was some longer words, some major portmanteaus that were almost thunder words in themselves. It really encourage you to speak it in a certain kind of way.
I liked on page just near the end, page 167, the blasphemous idiot who cannot tell a bomb from a pineapple or a pineapple.
That was great.
Yeah.
And then I loved the Nouvelletta section on page 159. Then Nouvelletta reflected for the last time in her little long life, and she made up all her myriads of drifting minds in one. She cancelled all her engorgements. She climbed over the banister. She gave her childy, crowdy cry. A light dress fluttered. She was gone into the river that had been a stream. It's just so suddenly it just comes into vivid focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like his writing is like a magic eye. You know, you're like, what am I saying? There it is. Wait, where'd it go?
Yeah.
You look long enough.
That's why I always read with a pen, and I draw all over my edition here just
what?
So I can. It's terrible.
I have writing in mine too.
Yeah. Just so that I can come back and remember the things that I find interesting, and then I come back to them. I go, I don't know why I found that interesting, but it made me laugh at the time, or I thought it was good. But look, we have had a lovely 90 minutes on this, and this is turning into a long one for you, and so I don't want to keep you too long, George. I know you have a day starting ahead of you, so we will wrap it up today. That is all the time we have for Wake. I'll be back next week with an entirely new chapter where we move on from the quiz and into section 1.7, where we start to get know some of HCE's kids, starting with Shem the Penman. So I've been Toby Malone, joined as ever by TJ Young, and we would like to offer our greatest thanks to my sister, Georgia Malone, for getting up early and reading with us. Thank you, George.
Thanks, Topes. It's been fun.
Most appreciated. Yes, we'll plug all of your stuff in the show notes. Anything that you need the people to know about, or pick up some new Instagram followers or something.
It's all secret at the moment.
It was excellent meeting you, hearing about you for the past, what has to be, it's close to 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
That's nice. So I hope he said good things about me.
Only the best.
His little baby sister.
Yes, although for the longest time when I was growing up in Perth, Georgia was Toby's sister, and now whenever I go back to Perth, I'm George's brother. So people don't know me anymore because I've been gone for a long time. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week, quiz enthusiasts. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.